All right, man, peace. So, brothers, the NBA season is upon us, and there are great expectations for the Boston Celtics. Will they be able to live up to the hype, or will they fall by the wayside, or maybe even possibly get shocked by an incumbent like the Toronto Raptors, or maybe even the Philadelphia 76ers? As we can see by their lineup, they should be great on both offense and defense. But I do believe that there may be some chemistry issues on that team by the middle of the year, especially with all of their talented players jockeying for playing time. So, of course, they're going to talk about it, and I'm going to chime in.
It was quite a rookie year for Jason Tatum and a year in general for the Celtics, but now they're overloaded with talent. So, as Bleacher Report tweets, who can stop them? Our own Kristen Ledlow stops in with Gordon Hayward and Kyrie Irving and Jason Tatum.
So recently you said you were basically 100%. Is there anywhere that you feel you're still lacking physically?
Well, I think just a little bit of explosion on my left leg, especially when I'm jumping single leg. I think that's the last piece that everyone has told me, and I can kind of feel it a little bit too. That'll come.
Well, if you're still uncomfortable jumping off of one leg, that means that you're not going to be able to finish very well in traffic. That's what that means.
With time, but for the most part, I feel really good out there playing. I'm great.
Do not be surprised if the Boston Celtics attempt to trade Gordon Hayward before the trading deadline, especially if they intend on opening up some playing time for one of their young wings, like a Jason Tatum or Jaylen Brown. Because I don't care how talented those young guys are, they are paying Gordon Hayward, and I can see them trying to showcase him early in the season to see if there are any bidders out there. Maybe even try to package him for an Anthony Davis by the trading deadline, because I believe that New Orleans is going to be struggling this year. Davis is going to be having a huge season, and it's going to come down to the Lakers or the Celtics to see who can acquire his services.
I'm great. I'm just happy to be healthy at this point. It was a long, kind of last few months of dealing with things that were kind of uncontrollable. So I'm glad that I got a chance to really settle down, mind, body, and spirit, and then be able to move forward. So it was just a lot of change going on, but a lot of self-introspection as well, and then trying to figure out how that fits into being a great basketball player at the same time. So, but I'm happy to be here, happy to experience it with my teammates finally again, and move forward. It was just confirmation of something that I knew myself, but that I feel like I had to show everybody that, that I belong here. And
I got news for you, bro. This is going to be a major season for you. Your PPG is going to have to jump up to about 19 or 20 points a game. Somewhere around there, they're going to have to be able to count on you. And your field goal percentage is going to have to be in the upper 40s at the very lowest. No lower than 46.5, but really somewhere around 47, 48% and up. Because it's not like you're going to be seeing double teams. You're going to have to bring it on the offensive end. It's going to be very interesting to see what the pecking order will be for the Celtics on offense.
That I definitely deserve, to be in the NBA and trying to be one of the best players. Yeah, I think we're all really confident. I think the experience was amazing for those young guys. You can't teach experience. Now that they actually have more experience than I do, right, as far as going to the playoffs.
That's the point. Once again, Gordon Hayward is 28, 29 years old, maybe even 30 years old. He's had a couple of very short playoff runs. Those young boys, not only are they going to be athletically at an advantage over him, but they also have more playoff experience than him. That's why I state once again, look for the Celtics to try to package Gordon Hayward before the trading deadline. I believe that they're going to give him the majority of the minutes, predominantly at the 3 or the 4 spot, starting off at the 4 spot until he gets more mobility in his ankle. And then as he gets more mobility, they're going to start playing him more at the 3 spot. And once they're able to verify, or once they're able to show other teams that he's fully back, they're going to start shopping him. Maybe even try to package him with an Al Horford, maybe a couple of first-round draft picks for Anthony Davis, and see if New Orleans bites. Because I just don't see him having a future there. Why would he have a future there on a team that has Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown? It just makes no sense.
Playoffs and stuff. But, it was great for them, and I think it'll only help us out.
Well, welcome back. We're glad to have you.
Thank you.
All right, Kristen, thank you. Great to see Gordon Hayward in great spirits and healthy. Want to get everybody, let me start with my coach here, because they say good problem to have, right? Well, that's nice, unless you're the coach who has to figure out how to make it all work.
There's definitely such a thing as having too much talent. I remember seeing many teams that seem to have too many of the same type of player on their team. And those teams oftentimes they can get to the semifinals or the conference finals. But when they face a team that's extremely well coached and has two great players and a bunch of role players, those teams with a bunch of good to very good players, they normally go out in the playoffs to a team with two great players and a great coach. For example, I remember the Portland Trail Blazers in 2000, or even a little bit before that. I think even in 99, they lost to the Spurs. And then in 2000, they lost to the Lakers. They just could not get over the hump. They had Pippen, they had Steve Smith, they had Bonzi Wells, they had Rasheed. They had a lot of very good players, but they did not have that one alpha. And that will hurt you. That will hold you back in pivotal playoff moments. That's how you know that they're going to have to establish a pecking order. Kyrie's going to have to show the rest of those guys very early, I'm still the alpha here.
That's a difficult task, Zeke, when you look at minutes, opportunities, and the amount of players the Celtics have.
Yeah, he'll be able to make it work in terms of minutes and opportunity because he has talent. The thing he's going to have to do best is what Chuck Daly did miraculously with us. He's got to manage egos, right? You got to be able to manage everyone's ego and make them sacrifice for team.
Well, the good news for Brad Stevens is that he has a lot of talented players, and like Isaiah Thomas states, he is going to have to manage egos, but it's not like he has a bunch of guys 26, 27 years old on the team. It's a pretty good mixture of guys. Yeah, Alpha is a player who's already been to the finals 3 times and was able to win a finals in a Kyrie Irving. So Kyrie will not be as ego-driven as a lot of the other players because even though he's only 25 going on 26, he's accomplished so much that his accomplishments speak for themselves. He's not a guy trying to make his first all-star team or who's trying to have his first season averaging 20 a game. Now you also have a player like Al Horford who at this point in his career, he just wants to win. Gordon Hayward is the player that most likely would be the person that they may have a problem with or an issue with because he's trying to prove that he's back. He's also trying to show that he's earned his contract. And he's also in that late 20s area where he wants to win, but he wants to be that guy. Now, when it comes to Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, both those guys are 21, 20, 22 years old, however old they are. They're still young enough where they want to prove themselves, but they don't want to be the one to upset the apple cart. Now, I could see a Marcus Smart being a problem because he seems to be very tempestuous. But I think that as long as Brad Stevens plays his cards right, he shouldn't have too many issues in regards to things that get out of the locker room. I'm sure that there are going to be some issues in the locker room with playing time, but as long as he plays his cards right, he should be okay. But once again, I do think that by the All-Star break, or I should say by the trading deadline, they are going to try to move Gordon Hayward.
And I look at Mark Aguirre, in my opinion, should be in the Hall of Fame.
I agree. Mark Aguirre is a Hall of Famer. Look at his stats. I believe his first year in the NBA was the 81-82 season. And pretty much from the 81-82 season all the way to the 87-88 season, so probably about 7 straight years, he averaged anywhere from 23 to 27 or 28 points a game for about 7 straight years. Once again, if Tracy McGrady can get into the Hall of Fame on the first ballot, Mark Aguirre should have been in the Hall of Fame. But we know what's holding him back, being a bad boy.
Hall of Fame, okay? Bill Laimbeer should be in the Hall of Fame.
I agree. I stated that in a previous video. Very long time ago. Bill Laimbeer is a Hall of Famer, but we also know what's holding him back, being a bad boy. In addition to that, Mark Aguirre was known as a malcontent even when he was with the Mavericks. But he's a Hall of Fame player. They both deserve to be in the Hall of Fame. They're both 2-time champions. And Bill Laimbeer made, I think, maybe 3 or 4 All-Star teams in the mid-'80s. This is before Patrick Ewing was drafted by the Knicks and, of course, pretty much started to take over that All-Star spot by the late 80s. But in the mid-'80s, Bill Laimbeer was making All-Star teams.
Hall of Fame. These were 2 players that had Hall of Fame careers in front of them. Then we get a Dennis Rodman, who starts to develop. He takes minutes away from Mark Aguirre. He takes rebounds away from Bill Laimbeer. Bill Laimbeer had led the league in rebounding, I think, for 3 straight years. Then we get Dennis Rodman. Now Dennis Rodman leads the league in rebounding, so Laimbeer kind of takes a lesser role. We get Mark Aguirre, who's a great offensive player, but Rodman is also a great defender. So Mark Aguirre takes a less of an offensive role, and we become a great basketball team. Now, can those great players that he have, can Coach Steve, manage the egos and get them to sacrifice?
It's going to start with Kyrie, though. Kyrie's going to have to help him in managing the egos, number one, by managing his own. If the other players see how eager Kyrie Irving is to be deferential in regards to what his teammates want, it's going to spread. Whatever your alpha does is what's going to spread amongst the rest of the soldiers. If the alpha is selfish, then the other soldiers are just going to look out for themselves. If the alpha is magnanimous or shows generosity, then the other soldiers are going to be more likely to want to share the wealth. So a lot of it's going to be up to Kyrie.
And buy-ins and take a lesser role to be a better team.
You talked about alpha males before. We've got, obviously, Kyrie, who we look at that way, but when you look at usage, I feel like we're going to you, because you just look the smartest on set. So we go to usage.
Wait.
Be careful, Casey Stern. Be careful. You're on a panel with two black men and a white man, and you said that he looked the smartest. Be careful how that can be misconstrued. That's assuming that there is a misconstruence going on there. Who knows? Maybe it's purposeful.
Wait. It's only the glasses. It's only the glasses.
Oh, wait a minute.
David Griffin trying to clean it up. He said it's only glasses. It's only the glasses. Yeah. Good job, David Griffin.
Wait a minute.
He said egos. I just wanted to remind everyone. When you look at the usage last year, what stands out about what you saw from Tatum and Brown, and maybe now what could be interesting to try and figure out now moving forward?
Well, it's interesting. I think you don't expect, when you look at the numbers, you don't expect Jaylen Brown to be as ball dominant as he was the second half of the season, but he really was. And the absence of Hayward and Kyrie enabled Tatum to really flourish in a way that first round picks and rookies typically don't get to do with a very good playoff team. He was carrying that group offensively down the stretch. So now you're introducing a bunch of ball dominance back into the mix. So to the point Isaiah made, not just managing the egos, managing the touches, managing your offense, and how that all works together will be a really interesting challenge, because those two young kids have another level or two they can get to. So what happens to their growth and development when these...
Easy. Their growth and development is going to be halted until they move Gordon Hayward. That's what that means. That's why they have, I won't say a big problem, they have a good problem on their hands, because they're actually suffering from an abundance of riches. And I believe that Danny Ainge is going to pull the trigger sometime before the trading deadline, or at least he's going to compete to pull the trigger for that Anthony Davis move. Because if they get Anthony Davis and all they have to give up is, say, Gordon Hayward, Al Horford, and a couple of first-round draft picks, I might even put them ahead of the Warriors. I would give it a 50-50 chance if the Celtics were to meet the Warriors in the finals. I would say that it's pretty much even Steven with an Anthony Davis in the middle.
When these other two pieces get put into the mix, it's really going to be interesting. And I think, again, the reason it's going to work in all likelihood is they've got an organizational ethos that is, we're bigger than the sum of our parts. From the time Brad got there, they were built on, we're going to outwork people, we're going to be about the right things, and we're going to overachieve because of that. So I think one of the most unheralded thing that happened for them this summer, in addition to getting healthy, is they got Marcus Smart to re-sign on a team-friendly deal. He is the one who's representative of that identity. He reminds everybody every day, this is what it means to be a Celtic.
Does he really remind people of that, or is he a player who just did not want to leave Boston, or maybe realize that he has a particular set of skills that are taken to their maximum, to their optimum, while being a sixth man or even a seventh man, really just a backup guard on the Celtics? Maybe he understands that he could have went somewhere else and made the same exact money and been losing, because he knows what his niche is. Sometimes being self-aware is your best characteristic, your best attribute. But there's no doubt in my mind that he was desperate to sign back with Boston, because he understands where they are right now. They're on the cusp of doing something great. So I'm not going to give Marcus Smart too much credit for self-sacrifice.
And I think that makes it a lot easier from a continuity standpoint.
Speaking of making it easier, thank you for using ethos to magnify the players. Let's go to our Dookie here on set. Obviously, Tatum had a great year. I want to ask you about something different about Hayward, because coming off of injuries, and I think back to what you talked about at the Hall, there's a lot that goes in mentally you guys would understand that we wouldn't, beyond even physically. How much can you really simulate, Grant, and how much will we learn about Hayward on the floor once the season really begins?
Well, first of all, thank you, Grant, for balancing the intellect on that side of it. Appreciate that.
I think I told you it's the glasses. It's only the glasses.
Yes,
Well
thank
played.
you. You know what? I think there's, when you're coming back from an injury like that, you can take two approaches. You can either one, I want to get back to a level. I want to prove myself. I want to show that I'm that all-star. But in this case, you can also take the other way where I want to just. I'm appreciative. I want to come back. I want to work my way. I want to get back to trusting who I am. And the problem is, you can go and play in the summer and pick up ball and do all the training, but nothing prepares you for the regular season. I think Hayward's in a wonderful position right now because he doesn't have to carry the load. He doesn't have to come in and justify his contract
Well, that's what you're saying, Grant Hill, but I believe that certain things may be going on in his mind, or at least possibly are going on in his mind. You can't tell me that you're a 28, 29-year-old Gordon Hayward, or 30 years old, however old he is, and you're not saying to yourself, I'm making way more money than these second or third year players, and I basically have to prove myself not only as an NBA player, but I have to prove that I'm better than them. Because there's going to come a point in this up and coming regular season that if he's not playing as well as many of the fans believe that Jaylen Brown was playing or Jason Tatum was playing, they're going to start to ask questions as to why he's getting as many minutes as he's getting. So those thoughts of self-doubt are going to be there. Those thoughts of I have to prove myself are going to be there. Now, to a degree, I agree with you that he's in a pretty good situation in which it's not like they're asking him to average 25 or 26 points a game because of how much money they're paying him. But still, I mean, just the pride within any athlete or within any professional, you want to show your level of proficiency.
like he maybe fought this time last year. Now he's just got to come in and play, fit in. He's not going to probably not want to rock the boat. I think that's his personality. I think he wants to fit in and mesh. He doesn't want to stand out. So I don't anticipate him being a problem, but it is a bigger problem because he is an important player. He has a skill set. You have a guy that can help a team, but you have Kyrie Irving coming back. You know, Tatum and Brown were complementary players, you know, pretty much throughout the entire season until Kyrie stepped down. And in the playoff, they became the go-to guys. And these guys, do you hinder their development by having them take a back seat? How do you manage their growth along with Kyrie inserting him back into the mix? I think they'll struggle with that, but because the East is so bad, I think they'll still win games. And
you make a lot of good points, Grant, but remember, the Celtics, I think that they're going to approach this season as saying to themselves, no, we want to pick up exactly where we left off last season. We had the best record in the East, well, the second best record in the East last season, and we want to have the best record this season because they still have not proved anything yet. And I'm sure that at the very least they want to have the best record in the East, if not the best record in the NBA. Because if your aspiration is to get to the finals, do you really want to get to the finals and say to yourself, well, we don't have home court against the Warriors or the Rockets per se, but we still like our chances? Of course not. You want to make sure that you leave no stones unturned. And let's not forget, Toronto actually had the best record in the East last year. And for all intents and purposes, we expect them to be better with Mr. Kawhi Leonard.
And you are hopeful that as you go through the season, they'll figure it all out and be at their best in the postseason.
Yeah, Zeke, I want to follow. Go ahead.
I want to ask him a question about Hayward, just in terms of trusting your body. I mean, you had a very serious injury, you know, and he's had one. Like, the confidence that you need to regain in your body and trust in your body, what psychologically, how does that affect you? And when do you see him having real trust again?
You know, Isaiah, I went through what he went through 4 times. So I missed 4 seasons. So when I finally got healthy, it took me a year to get back to really trusting my body. But it's interesting because part of who you are, part of your psyche.
When you jumped or when you ran, did you think it was going to go out on you, or like did it make you more cautious?
I was probably a little bit more cautious, a little bit more fearful. And, you know, when you're right, when you're healthy, when you're, you know, Isaiah Thomas, all-star, all-pro, Hall of Famer, you're not thinking about, you know, my ankle or my knee or whatever. You're out there just competing. You have all your weapons. You're going at it. And so that's in the back of your mind, and it's always there, and you always feel it. I mean, I always felt it when I did get back. And so I don't know his situation, a different injury than what I had, but it's a physical recovery, but it's also that mental and emotional recovery, and that takes longer to get that back, and it's different for everybody. But for me, after 4 seasons, it took me a good part of 1 year to get back to finally trusting my body again.
Grant, when we were in Phoenix together, you mentioned that the way it was difficult for you was in traffic. You were never really as comfortable stretching your leg out, going one-legged and setting your leg in traffic. And I thought it was meaningful that Gordon told Kristen Ledlow, I'm basically 100% except for my one-leg explosion.
Yeah.
That's a big deal when you're...
That's a huge deal, because once again, that means that you cannot finish, as he stated, you can't finish in the lane. If the opposing team is playing defense on you, they're developing their scouting report on you, and they see that you're showing reticence and trying to pump fake and take it to the basket, all they're going to do is they're going to play you for the jump shot. They may play a little bit off of you, maybe press you up close even more to try to force you into trying to penetrate. And then maybe even sticking their feet under you when you go up in the air, talk a little trash to you. They're going to try to keep that doubt in your mind.
When you're a one-leg jumper, so he's not really 100% right now.
We'll talk more about how the kind of seeding might work looking ahead, but it's interesting. During your era, you had to, as Ric Flair said, to be the man, you got to beat the man. You would have to do that. To get the torch passed, you had to earn it. LeBron left the East, and most people now think it's in the Celtics' hands. They're going to have targets on their back without having won the conference the year.
That's very true. To be the man, you do have to beat the man, but in boxing, you also have something called a vacant title. So when you have a great champion who decides to vacate his title and move up to another weight class or retire, that means that all the top contenders, they get to compete for the title. And oftentimes, competing for a vacant title can be as feverish as trying to take down the champion. And that's what the Boston Celtics, that's what they're going to have to go through this year. It's going to be a very interesting season for the Celtics on many levels. Not just to see if they can maintain their team continuity and their team unity, but also to see how they play together on the floor, because this is the first time that this unit is going to be all together on the floor. It's going to be a lot of strange dynamics, because once again, the pecking order is going to have to be established. And then at the end of the day, are they even going to be the best team in the East? Because I'm not quite sure that I'm going to count out Toronto quite yet. I'm going to pick Boston to go to the finals. As of right now, as presently constituted, I would have the Warriors beating Boston in the finals in 6 games. But if they were to get knocked out of the Eastern Conference playoffs prior to getting to the finals, it wouldn't shock me. If they were to make a major trade for a top-level player, that would not shock me either. So as of right now, I'm just waiting to see how things transpire.
It's the year prior, which is very, very rare.
Yeah, it's very rare, and you become now the hunted as opposed to being a hunter. And when you become the hunted, but you haven't won the prize, right? You didn't win the ring, so they're not champions, but yet they're going to be treated like champions right now. So everyone is going to mark the Celtics on their schedule. Now, Kyrie Irving knows what to expect, but everybody else who's playing on that team and the people who are even coaching that team, they have no idea what they're getting ready to run into this season, because everyone is going to give them their best shot every single night. And can they withstand that pressure? Do they have the type of stamina to go through that type of season?
As well as intestinal fortitude.
And when they hit a rough spot, will they have enough confidence and collective togetherness to stay together and overcome? The champion has traveled that journey, and that's how he got to be champion. But the one who has been handed the torch and hasn't traveled the journey, he doesn't understand what's getting ready to happen to him. And when the pressure comes and that adversity comes, can that team collectively come together and say, based on experience, this is what we did last year, this is how we got through it. They don't have championship experience. They just have a championship, here it is, you're the champion of the East right now.
That was pretty smart. That was good.
Master's in education. Just so you know.
We're going to hear from...
Let him know, Isaiah Thomas, let him know that you got that piece of paper from college so that you can validate your intelligence to him. But anyway, we'll see what happens with the Boston Celtics this season. Peace.